Welcome to Conspiracy Theories and Cover-Ups. I'm your host Ben Carter, and in today's episode, we investigate the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, known as HAARP. Is it truly a scientific facility designed to study the ionosphere, or is it a covert weapon capable of altering weather patterns and influencing human thought? In this episode, we uncover the hidden story behind one of the most controversial technologies on Earth. The origins of the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program begin not in Alaska, where its antennas rise against the sky, but in the final decades of the Cold War. During the 1970s and 80s, the United States military became increasingly focused on developing unconventional tools of warfare. While nuclear weapons dominated headlines, another, quieter arms race was taking shape, one that involved the Earth's upper atmosphere, radio frequencies, and the invisible boundaries of human consciousness. In 1993, construction began on a facility near Gakona, Alaska. Officially, it was a collaboration between the United States Air Force, the United States Navy, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, commonly known as DARPA, and the University of Alaska. The project's stated mission was to analyze the ionosphere, the region of the Earth's atmosphere, that extends roughly 50 to 600 miles above the surface. This layer is electrically charged and plays a crucial role in radio communication, GPS signals, and weather patterns. By sending high-frequency radio waves into the ionosphere, researchers claimed they could study how it behaves and better understand its role in global systems. However, from the very beginning, the level of military involvement in the project raised red flags. The budget was substantial, nearly $300 million over several phases, and the presence of defense agencies suggested dual-use intentions. Documents revealed that among HAARP's capabilities was the power to heat specific regions of the ionosphere with pinpoint accuracy. This was not a passive observational tool. It was an active emitter capable of injecting large amounts of energy into the sky. Conspiracy researchers began to ask troubling questions. Why would the military be so interested in manipulating the ionosphere? Could the heating of atmospheric layers have unintended or perhaps intended consequences on the weather? More disturbingly, could these high-frequency emissions be used to influence human behavior by interfering with brainwave patterns? Adding to the mystery were previous experiments conducted by other countries. The Soviet Union, for example, had engaged in similar projects, such as the woodpecker signal in the 1970s, a mysterious low-frequency broadcast believed by some to be an early attempt at atmospheric manipulation. With the Cold War backdrop of paranoia and covert development, the stage was set for something like HAARP to emerge, officially as science, unofficially as something far more powerful. Among the key figures connected to the development of HAARP was Dr. Bernard Eastlund, a physicist with a background in nuclear and plasma science. In the early 1980s, Eastlund filed a patent for a technology that bore striking similarities to what would later become the foundation of HAARP. His patent described a method of altering the ionosphere using focused radio frequency energy, with potential applications including weather modification, missile defense, and even disrupting communications over large regions. The patent was assigned to Arco Power Technologies Incorporated, a subsidiary of the Atlantic Richfield Company. Notably, Arco also owned natural gas fields in Alaska, providing the energy necessary to power such a system. Eastlund's work referenced earlier theories by Nikola Tesla, specifically the idea that energy could be transmitted wirelessly through the atmosphere over long distances. Tesla believed that Earth's ionosphere could serve as a medium for broadcasting vast amounts of power. Eastlund's adaptation took that concept and aligned it with modern military strategy. While Eastlund eventually distanced himself from HAARP, calling the final design a watered-down version of his original concept, his name remains deeply entwined with the facility's origin story. Researchers point to his patent as evidence that weather manipulation and high-energy transmission were considered viable decades before HAARP was publicly acknowledged. On the government side, agencies such as the United States Air Force Research Laboratory and DARPA played major roles. DARPA in particular has a long history of pursuing advanced, often secretive technologies, including remote viewing, autonomous weapons, and mind-machine interfaces. Its interest in atmospheric research added fuel to the theory that HAARP had strategic objectives far beyond ionospheric science. Another important connection emerged through Raytheon, one of the largest defense contractors in the world. Raytheon was responsible for much of the technology used at HAARP and also held contracts related to directed energy weapons, radar systems, and electromagnetic research. Their involvement strengthened the belief that the facility was part of a broader weapons development strategy. As these entities came together, they formed a web of scientific ambition, military strategy, and corporate interest. The people behind HAARP were not fringe inventors or isolated engineers. They were deeply embedded in the defense establishment, working at the intersection of advanced science and national security. This convergence of power and technology created the perfect environment for secrecy, speculation, and conspiracy. The earliest claims surrounding HAARP were focused on weather control. Independent researchers and conspiracy theorists argued that the facility's ability to heat the ionosphere could, in turn, influence jet streams, atmospheric pressure zones, and storm systems. These claims gained traction in the late 1990s, when unexplained anomalies began appearing in global weather patterns, events that seemed too sudden, too localized, and too intense to be entirely natural. One of the most widely cited pieces of evidence was the unusual behavior of hurricanes in the early 2000s. Researchers pointed to rapid shifts in storm direction, unexpected intensification, and sudden weakening as signs of interference. While mainstream meteorologists attributed these changes to evolving climate models, others argued that a pattern was emerging, one tied directly to bursts of high-frequency activity recorded at HAARP during the same periods. Beyond weather manipulation, more disturbing allegations began to surface. The claim that HAARP could influence human consciousness by altering electromagnetic fields around the Earth became a recurring theme in alternative research circles. The human brain, after all, operates using electrical impulses, waves that can be measured in hertz, much like radio frequencies. The theory held that by targeting these frequencies, it might be possible to induce specific psychological states such as agitation, confusion, or even depression in targeted populations. Documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act revealed that the United States military had, in fact, explored technologies related to behavior modification through electromagnetic influence. A 1994 report titled Low-Intensity Conflict and Modern Technology discussed the theoretical possibility of using electromagnetic fields to affect human brain activity. Though the document made no direct reference to HAARP, its inclusion in the same era added weight to the growing suspicions. Further claims came from international observers. In 2010, the Venezuelan government accused HAARP of causing the catastrophic earthquake in Haiti. Though no evidence was ever produced, the accusation echoed similar concerns voiced by Russian officials years earlier. They too questioned the facility's potential to cause tectonic disturbances, pointing to its capacity to inject massive amounts of energy into the Earth's upper atmosphere. Other controversial events were linked to HAARP by timing alone. Power grid failures, mass animal deaths, and sudden shifts in magnetic readings were all cited in online forums and investigative reports. While no direct line could be drawn, the synchronicities raised uncomfortable questions. Questions about whether technology could be used not only to shape the environment, but to influence the very stability of nations and minds. To assess whether the claims about HAARP hold any measurable weight, we must look closely at the core evidence cited by both researchers and government sources. The physical structure itself is not a mystery. Located in Gacona, Alaska, the HAARP facility consists of a dense grid of over 100 antennas, each standing more than 60 feet tall. These antennas are arranged across a 30-acre field and work together as a phased array. This configuration allows operators to direct high-frequency radio waves upward into the ionosphere with remarkable precision. According to official documentation, the HAARP transmitter can produce over 3 million watts of radio frequency power. When focused into the ionosphere, this energy heats a localized region of charged particles, creating a temporary plasma cloud. Researchers claim this allows them to simulate natural disturbances in the ionosphere, such as those caused by solar flares or geomagnetic storms. But critics argue that the sheer amount of energy involved could have far more profound consequences, intended or not. Satellite data, available from various open-source monitoring platforms, has confirmed bursts of high-frequency radiation over the facility, often coinciding with atmospheric disturbances. While these emissions are labelled as harmless by officials, they remain difficult to explain within the narrow context of academic experimentation. Furthermore, amateur radio operators around the world have long reported interference patterns and strange signal anomalies linked to HAARP's operational cycles. In addition to the physical hardware, leaked emails and declassified research papers have also fueled speculation. Some documents reference ongoing studies into magnetosphere-ionosphere coupling, which involves the interaction between the Earth's magnetic field and the upper atmosphere. Critics argue that this type of work could open the door to disrupting geomagnetic stability, not just for experimental purposes, but as a potential weapon of war. Another point of contention is the lack of transparency. While the facility has occasionally opened its doors for public tours, many of its operational logs remain classified. The military officially transferred control of HAARP to the University of Alaska in 2015, yet researchers note that the same defense contractors, such as Raytheon, continue to provide technological support. This suggests that while the appearance of academic openness has increased, the deeper programs and capabilities may remain hidden under layers of private contracts and restricted access. Taken together, the physical evidence, energy output, signal anomalies, and lack of operational transparency form a puzzle that is difficult to dismiss outright. At the very least, HAARP possesses the tools and infrastructure to affect both the atmosphere and, potentially, the human mind. Whether or not those tools have been used to their full capacity remains a question shrouded in silence. Critics of the HAARP conspiracy theory often point to scientific consensus and technical limitations as evidence that many of the claims are either exaggerated or unfounded. From their perspective, the idea that a single facility could control global weather systems or influence human consciousness falls outside the realm of practical science. According to official sources, including the University of Alaska and former HAARP operators, the energy output of the facility is minuscule when compared to natural forces such as solar radiation or planetary magnetic fields. Skeptics note that while HAARP can transmit millions of watts, the actual amount of energy that reaches the ionosphere is a fraction of that total. Once those radio waves leave the antenna array and pass into the atmosphere, much of the signal disperses. In their view, this makes it unlikely that the facility could meaningfully alter weather or cause earthquakes. Furthermore, no peer-reviewed studies have demonstrated a clear link between HAARP operations and environmental disasters. Defenders of the program argue that the scientific purpose of HAARP has been consistently misrepresented. They claim it was designed solely to study the ionosphere in order to improve radio communications, satellite stability, and early warning systems for geomagnetic storms. In this context, the heating of the upper atmosphere is seen not as an act of manipulation, but as a method of simulating natural phenomena to better understand them. The accusation of mind control also receives significant pushback. Neurologists and electromagnetic researchers argue that human brainwaves operate at very low frequencies, typically below 30 Hz. HAARP, by contrast, transmits in the high-frequency band between 2 and 10 MHz. According to these experts, there is no known mechanism by which high-frequency radio waves could directly influence thought patterns or emotional states at ground level. Additionally, the supposed links between HAARP activity and natural disasters have often relied on circumstantial evidence or unverified timing coincidences. In the case of the 2010 Haiti earthquake, for example, no abnormal electromagnetic activity was recorded at the time. Despite this, the theory persisted, driven more by political distrust and social media than scientific observation. While skepticism about government transparency is widespread, many researchers caution that overemphasis on HAARP may distract from more plausible concerns about weather modification and psychological warfare technologies that do not involve ionospheric manipulation at all. They argue that real covert research is more likely to involve data collection, artificial intelligence, and biochemical interventions, fields that remain far less scrutinized than a decommissioned Alaskan facility. The broader implications of the HAARP conspiracy go far beyond questions of science or military technology. At its core, the theory taps into something deeper, an anxiety that invisible forces may already be shaping the world in ways the average person cannot detect or resist. Whether or not HAARP itself is capable of controlling weather or thoughts, the belief in its power reflects a growing fear of systems operating beyond democratic oversight. In the post-Cold War era, public trust in institutions has declined steadily. Governments, corporations, and scientific bodies are often viewed with suspicion, especially when they operate behind closed doors. HAARP, with its military origins, isolated location, and ties to defense contractors, became a perfect symbol of this growing distrust. Its highly technical nature meant that few people could truly understand or explain what it did, which made it easier for speculation to flourish. For many, the theory represents a proxy battle between transparency and secrecy. If HAARP can influence the environment or the human mind, even in theory, then what else might be possible through the use of unseen technologies? From social engineering to economic manipulation, the fear is that human perception and natural systems are no longer safe from interference. The psychological impact of these beliefs is significant. When people believe that weather itself can be manipulated, it becomes harder to trust official explanations for natural disasters. A hurricane, a drought, or a flood may no longer be seen as an act of nature, but as a test of control. This creates a landscape in which every event becomes suspect, every coincidence becomes a clue, and every silence from officials becomes evidence of guilt. In this environment, the line between plausible science and speculative fear begins to blur. The idea that external signals could affect mood or behavior feeds into larger fears of mind control, surveillance, and the loss of free will. This is especially true in a world saturated by digital devices, electromagnetic exposure, and algorithmic influence. While HAARP may not be responsible for these developments, it fits easily into the larger narrative of invisible manipulation. What the theory ultimately reveals is not just fear of a facility in Alaska, but a growing unease with how technology is used in secret. It suggests that people no longer feel they have access to the truth or control over their environment. Whether the power lies in radio waves or something more abstract, the concern remains the same. Who is pulling the strings, and what is their end goal? As the HAARP theory evolved, it began to influence not just fringe communities, but mainstream media narratives and pop culture itself. Television documentaries, news segments, and best-selling books started referencing the facility, not as a niche concern, but as a symbol of hidden power. Shows such as Jesse Ventura's Conspiracy Theory and episodes of investigative programs featured interviews with former officials, scientists, and whistleblowers who questioned the facility's true mission. These broadcasts brought the theory into millions of homes, blurring the line between legitimate inquiry and entertainment. Online platforms further amplified the discussion. As internet forums, YouTube channels, and alternative news websites grew in popularity, HAARP became a frequent topic of debate. Videos claiming to show weather anomalies linked to the facility racked up millions of views. Independent researchers presented overlays of storm paths, seismic events, and electromagnetic readings, suggesting hidden correlations. Whether the evidence was solid or speculative, the sheer volume of content shaped public perception. The facility transformed from a little-known research site into a symbol of shadowy control. Mainstream media, for its part, often dismissed these claims outright, labeling them as conspiracy theory or pseudoscience. But this dismissal only reinforced the belief among some that the truth was being actively suppressed. The lack of investigative coverage by major outlets was seen not as evidence of nothing happening, but as confirmation that something important was being hidden. In this context, media silence became its own form of validation. Governments outside the United States also began referencing HAARP in their official communications. In 2014, a member of the European Parliament submitted a request for investigation into environmental modification technologies, explicitly naming HAARP as a facility of concern. The Russian military and Chinese news agencies likewise mentioned the project in discussions about electromagnetic warfare. Even without providing direct evidence, these acknowledgements lent international weight to the ongoing suspicion. The cultural influence of the theory became self-reinforcing. As more people encountered the idea through books, videos, and media appearances, the narrative gained momentum. For some, HAARP became a gateway into a much larger worldview, one where governments, scientists, and corporations are seen not as public servants, but as architects of control. In this version of reality, the atmosphere is no longer just air and weather, it is a battlefield, and HAARP, whether real or symbolic, stands at the center. Beyond the mainstream discussion, the HAARP theory has given rise to a range of speculative and fringe ideas, concepts that stretch the boundaries of accepted science and conventional geopolitics. Among the most provocative is the belief that HAARP is not a standalone system, but part of a global network of energy-based weapons designed to maintain planetary control. According to this view, similar facilities exist across the world, including in Norway, Russia, Australia, and even on covert mobile platforms such as ships or aircraft. Proponents of this theory point to the European Incoherent Scatter Scientific Association radar array in Tromsø, Norway, and Russia's Sura facility near Nizhny Novgorod. Though presented as academic research sites, these locations share structural similarities with large antenna fields, high-frequency transmitters, and ties to military or intelligence agencies. The suggestion is that these installations are linked in a coordinated global grid, capable of targeting atmospheric and geophysical regions with extreme precision. Some theorists take it a step further, claiming these technologies are tied to global population control, consciousness suppression, or even interdimensional interference. They propose that by manipulating electromagnetic fields at the planetary level, these systems can not only affect weather and mood, but also act as barriers to cosmic energy or higher states of awareness. In this interpretation, HAARP is not merely a scientific experiment. It is a blockade designed to suppress the evolution of human consciousness. Others speculate that the technology may have extraterrestrial origins. They draw connections between the ionospheric research at HAARP and ancient structures that may have served similar functions, such as pyramids or megalithic sites. These theorists suggest that modern governments may be attempting to replicate or reawaken energy systems known to ancient civilizations, either through reverse engineering or hidden knowledge passed down through secret societies. Still more radical interpretations view HAARP as a tool not just for control, but for planetary transformation. In this view, the project is part of a terraforming agenda, altering Earth's natural systems to suit a new regime, whether that regime is artificial intelligence, a post-human elite, or an unknown off-world influence. The rapid increase in electromagnetic pollution, the deployment of new frequency-based technologies, and the rising incidence of energetic instability on Earth are cited as indicators that something larger is underway. While these fringe perspectives are often dismissed by traditional researchers, they continue to thrive in alternative communities. For those who subscribe to them, the question is not whether HAARP is real, it is what level of reality it operates on. To them, the facility is a node in a far larger system, one that stretches beyond borders, beyond governments, and perhaps beyond the known limits of human understanding. After decades of operation, controversy and speculation, the story of HAARP remains unresolved. Official explanations insist that the facility is merely a research site, an academic tool to study the upper atmosphere and support communications infrastructure. But the details we have explored in this episode suggest something far more complex. The presence of military oversight, The massive energy outputs, the absence of full transparency, and the deep involvement of defense contractors all raise legitimate concerns. Whether the facility is being used for weather modification, behavior influence, or something more hidden, the suspicion persists. What gives the HAARP theory such staying power is not simply the science behind it. It is the convergence of secrecy, symbolism, and societal fear. In a world where global systems are increasingly controlled by algorithms, surveillance, and remote technologies, the idea that the very air above us could be manipulated becomes more than science fiction. It becomes plausible. And once that line is crossed, every strange weather event, every sudden shift in emotion, and every unexplained failure of infrastructure starts to feel like a potential clue. The deeper meaning behind the HAARP conspiracy may not lie in the antennas or transmitters, but in what they represent. They stand as a physical monument to the idea that control no longer requires occupation. Influence no longer needs direct force. Today, power operates through frequency, through code, through atmosphere. It is invisible, yet all-encompassing. And it thrives in the space between what we are told and what we are not allowed to know. As society becomes more digitally dependent, as the Earth's climate becomes more volatile, and as trust in authority continues to erode, theories like those surrounding HAARP will only gain strength. Whether fact, fiction, or something in between, they reveal an important truth. People want answers. They want to know who is shaping their world and why. And they are willing to question everything in the search for that truth. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Conspiracy Theories and Cover-Ups. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, gain access to bonus content, and unlock our entire library of video podcasts, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.